British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says he watched with his kids and wants it to be shown in schools.
It's abhorrent, and we have to tackle it.
My Prison Planet, UK, Prison Penitentiary Island, rather, the UK, where they can't apparently tell the difference between a scripted drama starring the albeit brilliant actor Stephen Graham, fantastic actor, played Al Capone in your thing, Boardwalk Empire. He's totally brilliant. I know that geezer. He's proper lovely and fantastic. However, this drama that he's starred in and I think produced, Adolescence, is being used as an example of why knife crime in the UK is being spurred on not by mass migration, not by economic deprivation and poverty, but by incels and Andrew Tate. Is this an example of the kind of ridiculous stupidity and political shortcutting that leads to idiocracy? Or is he right? Is Andrew Tate and his incel army, if you want to call it that, causing knife crime on the streets of Britain? Let's have a look at this phenomenon in my country and discuss it together and smarten ourselves right up. First of all, here's a legacy media bit of reporting on the subject. Let's get into it, guys.
Rarely in recent memory has a series resonated with audiences around the world the way Netflix's Adolescence has over the last couple of weeks. This morning, the British crime story with a 13-year-old suspect remains #1 on the streamer after an opening 2 weeks that broke a Netflix record with more than 66 million views. But Adolescence is about more than a murder. It's about real-life online culture and the state of boys these days. NBC News foreign correspondent Danielle Hamamdjian has our Sunday focus.
You're making a big mistake. He's only a kid.
Dad, I haven't done anything. Police barge into a middle-class home in northern England. A 13-year-old boy is arrested for stabbing a female classmate. Life, as the Miller family knows it, is blown apart.
Jamie Miller. What's going on? The time is 6:15 a.m. and I'm arresting you on suspicion of murder.
The Netflix series Adolescence is unlike anything you've ever seen. The gripping cinematography, 4 episodes, each filmed in one continuous hour-long shot. The lead character, a young teenage boy who had never acted before, plucked out of a working-class community. Look at me now!
It's funny when people say plucked out of a working class community, like working class communities are things you've got to be sort of taken out of. You're like a flower that grew in a pot of dirt. And
delivering a jaw-dropping performance. But what's drawn viewers from around the world is an uncomfortable question for many parents. What's fueling the rage of young men like Jamie?
We need to be having these conversations.
So not a young man, he's a little tiny child, isn't he? Now, I bet this show is brilliant. This is not a critique of the show, which I imagine is very good, and I should certainly watch it before criticising it. What I'm interested in is the cultural phenomena and the way that cultural artefacts are used and exploited. I'm interested in why the British government are talking about this. I'm interested in how the British media, but the media more generally, are using this cultural object and how they benefit from it. Because what we're all kind of looking for these days is ways to direct and control attention. Since mass media exploded into social media and now centralised bodies of media no longer have the default and inert control they could rely on, we have to compete for attention in different ways. And the government has to become more adept in the ways that it uses media. You can almost point out the stratosphere and the topography. You can see how like the various layers and levels of change. For example, Donald Trump is the clearest and most obvious exemplar of how politics change. Someone that understood rhetoric, understood social media, understood how to use Twitter. Then when you have a phenomenon like Brexit, which doesn't really have a central figure other than, of course, Nigel Farage, we began to see that social media was going to have a massive, massive impact on politics. Since then, we're in this new and extraordinary and somewhat amorphous part of the process where people work out how do you use cultural artifacts from legacy media, because I figure this show was made for something else before it was on Netflix. Now they're working out how do we use it to tell a particular story, because it's perfectly possible that a young man or a child could murder someone for a number of reasons. Remember when like hip hop first became a thing, they were like saying, oh, you can't have these explicit lyrics. And it was Ice Cube that made the amazing point. Hey, people have always talked about violence in music. What are all them cowboy ballads about? What is it when Johnny Cash says, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die? How come you can say that, but you can't have NWA saying, I killed a motherfucker and I shot an N-word or whatever it is that, you know, I actually like NWA quite a lot. I'm not being dismissive about their lyrics and poetry. What I'm saying is that cultural artifacts get deployed and used by the powerful in the same way that AI will get used by the powerful. AI could be used to benefit all of us. Who do you think is going to primarily benefit from it? A cultural artifact might tell a story that talks about poverty, decline, despair, loss of religious affiliation, breakdown of communities. Because if you want to tell a story about Britain and violence, talk about them 3 little girls that were murdered in Southport. That tells you a story about knife crime in Britain. So what is the cultural artifact that's being elevated? Is it a story about 3 little girls being murdered by a kid that was first generation? I think, was he Rwandan? I don't know enough about the story. But what I know is he weren't a white working class kid. I know that. Now, I'm not captivated by the subject of race. Let me say again, because this might become a cultural artifact that gets deployed. I believe we're all part of one human family, and our job here is to love and serve one another. And the reason I know that is because it's in the Bible, and I don't have to think about it myself because God tells me what to think instead of me making it up in my tiny little mind or waiting for cues from a culture that I know is more interested in power and control than it is in ethics, morality, and supreme truths. It's interested in control. That's why Keir Starmer is a fascinating phenomena, precisely because he is not fascinating and he is not phenomenal.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says he watched with his kids and wants it to be shown in schools.
It's abhorrent, and we have to tackle it.
The limited series inspired by a number of knife attacks in Great Britain. In Adolescence, Jamie is drawn into the world of Incels, which stands for involuntary celibate.
He's not drawn into the world of it like he's drawn into it. Because incel means you're not having any sex. That's this is an interesting world to investigate, the world of not having any sex. Noli South. We're partnering with Noli South, and we'll let you know how you can order some yourself. This is a really serious kombucha, CBD infused. In this one, it's managed. How much pumps do you put per can, Steve?
1 pump.
It's non-THC, so if you're in addiction from recovery from addiction like me, you're safe to use it. It's less than 0.3 THC. This, however, where you're given control of it yourself, you probably have to be careful, and I'm not allowed no more. Russell mustn't do that no more. Anyway, so what do you think? What's your best flavour?
Oh, this rosemary ginger lime is pretty amazing.
My favourite's the dragon fruit hops.
I think I might like turmeric or mango. What's this? I've never even seen blueberry. I've had that. Which one? Let me know. Anyway, you can order them here. There's a link in the description how you can participate, and if you use our code, you'll get a special discount. Let me know what you think of it. The incel phenomena is in itself quite complicated because male and masculine archetypes were vilified so excessively that people stopped wondering what a man was and what a man is supposed to be. The world of sex got very, very complicated. What constitutes consent? We all know what those rules are. Anyone that's ever had sex knows what it is to be in a sexual dynamic. And sexuality, like all animal power, has areas of nuance and complexity to it. But in this time where masculinity itself was put on trial and vilified, any male archetype or cultural figure that benefits from the ongoing flow of male archetypes, and there's a few of those that you might want to list right now, will be vilified and attacked. Young men need role models. They need male role models. They need processes of initiation. And when I say need, what I mean is this. Throughout history, they've always been there. Throughout history, you go to some tribe in the middle of nowhere that ain't been touched by culture. At the age of 13, 14, boys are taken away from their mother, often wounded in some superficial way or another to indicate that they're no longer boys but are in fact men. When you have a culture that vilifies masculinity and infantilizes the population, wanting people to drink soda pop their whole bleeding life and play on video games their whole bleeding life, they don't know what it is to be a man. They don't have their father take them out and say, this is what I used to do, son, now you're going to do it. This is your job. This is your role. This is the way we operate. Part of our function is we protect the community, and we in particular protect and honour women. If those kind of values are all fallen apart, they say, oh, there's no such thing as a woman, there's no such thing as a family, there's no such thing as a community, we can all just make it up as we go along. Who benefits from that? The centralised power benefits from it. The reason this story is fascinating is because it's an attempt to assert morality, and it's an attempt to make a moral position that can be utilised by the powerful. At the moment, the story they're telling is a story that will benefit them. If you get to vilify peripheral and marginal voices, that's great, because then you choose which ones to vilify them. If you say, wait a minute, what happened with those 3 little girls getting murdered in Southport? What does that tell us about the way our country is being run? When you get riots in Ireland, a country with a very different cultural history from my own in ways that are pretty significant and important, when they have riots and migration and rejection of globalist melting pot ideology, you got to tell a different story, but they tell the same story. Ireland's racist now. Everyone's racist. Everyone's an incel. It's Andrew Tate's fault. I think it might be a bit more complicated than that. And one thing they don't want you having access to is nuanced and complex information that might help you to decide for your bloody self what the truth is.
Like a number of young boys worldwide, he subscribes to the 80-20 rule.
80% of women are attracted to 20% of men.
To overcome that, some young men believe women have to be manipulated. This with self-proclaimed misogynist Andrew Tate popular online.
Cue Andrew Tate, everybody. Now, not that long ago, books like The Game, written by Neil Strauss about pickup culture, were celebrated. In fact, when I was in Hollywood, they were going to make a movie about that book, The Game, and that was about communities of men that honed psychological skills in order to pick up women. I, at that point in my life, was a single man and a right little womanizer. And I remember thinking, this ain't right, but oh well, it is money and it is a movie, so I'll probably do it. But the culture at that point didn't have a problem with it. Now the culture is reframing picking up women, which has always been pretty much a primary goal for young men. Let me know in the comments and chat if you've noticed that young men are interested in young women. Is that disgusting? Is that a crime? Is that a problem? Not if it's conducted respectfully, lovingly and consensually. Do you know of any books or theologies or philosophies that tell you how you should handle sex and sexuality? Yeah, the Bible, it tells you that sex is such a powerful force that can only really be contained within a marriage to ensure that women don't end up bringing up children on their own, and that men don't end up going around impregnating people and using sexual power as a form of sort of domination over people. There's so much information available to you, and the information that's getting cut versus the information that gets amplified is significant. Probably this show Adolescence is well made, and it's got, certainly in Stephen Graham, it's got a brilliant actor in it for sure, and it probably captures a lot of themes, archetypes and ideas that are significant and important, but the way it gets used and manipulated by power subsequent to its release and construction is what's important here. Why do you think the British government would be interested in emphasising the whiteness of the child, the class of the child, the fact that it's to do with involuntary celibacy and Andrew Tate, rather than it to do with, I don't know, poverty and lack of education, lack of good male models, lack of understanding of what you're supposed to be when you are a man? Why would it focus on A rather than B? Because A enables them to control, and B would diminish their control. If we don't learn to discern, they will continue to control us.
And phrases like "get back in the kitchen" and "your body, my choice, forever."
Like something like "get back in the kitchen" is a bloody ridiculous thing to say, and your body, my choice, that's a ridiculous thing to say. Individual sovereignty, individual freedom are vital principles for human beings everywhere. They're derived because we are sacred, because God dwells in us. If you don't believe that God dwells in human beings, then I don't know how you make arguments about the sanctity of individual lives and why there shouldn't be elites and tyranny. I don't know how you make those arguments. You might be able to make them, but you'll end up saying just because at some point. You'll end up saying just because. That's my prediction.
Viewed millions of times on social media.
Oh yeah, now knowing what I know about Andrew Tate is he's a provocateur. He says stuff. I mean, he just says stuff to get a reaction. He's understood how social media operates and functions. He's surviving in this environment. If you think that Andrew Tate is a problem, he is a symptom rather than cause, you would have to agree. Andrew Tate doesn't create online culture. He didn't create incels. He didn't create the vilification of the masculine. He didn't create the space where a reverse pendular swing would be required. Keir Starmer participated in the creation of that. Keir Starmer, remember when he was the head of the Crown Prosecution Service in the UK, extraordinarily was maximally authoritarian when it came to the persecution and prosecution of young people that participated in riots. Now, in this instance, they were mostly black kids because a black man died in police custody in my country in around 2007. Keir Starmer was the head of the CPS then, and they tried minors in adult courts. Did you know that? They tried minors, kids, in adult courts in order to, superficially, they say, just to keep it running, to keep the courts running and stuff. But also they issued extraordinarily draconian sentences. Kids that nicked bottles of water and stuff, or pallets of water, were given custodial sentences because it took place during a riot. In short, you might be like, oh, well, when black people rioting, you might be racist or crazy or something and think that that's, oh, no, good, I'm glad he was authoritarian. But no, that's the wrong thought. That's the wrong thought. Because what's revealed to you in Keir Starmer's past is that he's authoritarian. And what's he being? He was authoritarian then because there were social disturbances and they lent out and dealt out hefty sentences. Now he's being authoritarian to who? Oh, white families that are chatting on the internet and being racist. So the principle is what's important. And what's the principle? Maximum control. The surface, ignore that, whether the kids that are getting arrested in riots in 2007 are black. That's irrelevant. What's the principle? Control. The parents, don't worry about what they're saying. Unless they're saying we are going to commit a crime and for which there's already a law, then watch the principle. Control. We can arrest these people now. We can arrest people for saying stuff on WhatsApp. We've just established that idea. Now, anyone we want to arrest has probably said something for which you could be arrested for on WhatsApp. And now we're back to Kafka. Someone must have been telling lies about Joseph K. Because without warning, there's someone dressed up in his house telling him you're under arrest. That's the important thing. Keep you eyes on the prize.
Dr. Jennifer Hartstein is a child and family psychologist.
I think that social media does do different things for the different genders. And for young men, it's impacting their self-confidence, their self-esteem, but it's also fueling their aggression and their anger.
Adolescence has become part of the national conversation.
It shows a lot of things that we are not paying attention to, a lot of complex issues that are very difficult to unravel.
It's terrifying to me because I've got a 14-year-old, got another son as well.
Are you an incel, son? Have you been wanking? Oh no, where's this conversation going?
We've gone through safety and all those kind of things, but you don't really, he's not on social media, but still, there's chats with friends and you don't know who he's chatting with and who he's being influenced by.
So what's a parent to do?
I do believe it comes from modeling appropriate behavior. It comes from having open conversations. Men in the lives of boys need to be showing emotion, need to be talking about why it's okay to feel sad or feel hurt or feel disappointed or cry.
I'm sorry, son.
Stephen Graham, who co-created Adolescence and stars as Jamie's father, appeared on Today with Craig to talk about what he hopes people will take away from the series.
We should look at this, put a mirror up to society and have a look. Maybe we're all accountable in some way, shape or form. Do you know what I mean?
If we are all accountable, as Stephen Graham suggests there, then we should all be empowered and we oughtn't centralise or accrete power in institutions that have no real moral barometer, only expedience, control and utility. Remember the examples that we've given you. Keir Starmer at the CPS, maximally authoritarian when it came to the arrest, detainment and prosecution of black teenagers that were rioting after the death in custody of the black man Mark Duggan. Keir Starmer in office as Prime Minister, maximally authoritarian in the prosecution for online hate speech or private conversations on WhatsApp when it came to the parents discussing a teacher at their school and presumably using racist language. I use those two examples, though they may be somewhat obtuse and certainly diffuse, in order to illustrate this point. When you are dealing with authoritarianism, power for power's sake is always the goal. And they will pursue it in a variety of ways, sometimes by pretending that they're tough. All these migrants have kicked out 24,000. Sometimes by being compassionate. We have to do something about knife crime. But you will notice that the ends are always the same. If you have, for example, a religious purview, you'll be familiar with an idea like by their fruits shall we know them. And that will give you a guide. If the results of someone's conduct is authority and power, That was the intention. Why has Britain gone crazy over Adolescence? Because Britain's gone crazy, full stop. And even if it is a brilliant show, and I bet it is, starring a brilliant actor and creator like Stephen Graham, the way it's being used in the culture is, as usual, to maximise the control and power of those that are already in authority. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and the chat? Remember, we will be streaming Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And if you have Rumble Premium, you get additional content like what you're watching right now was first shown on Rumble Premium. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.